How's it going, Exile? So I want to talk a little bit about the state of the Sorceress and of elemental skills in general in 0.3, and overall I'm really satisfied with the changes they are doing here. Even though me as a player usually like one-button playstyles, as I, for example, enjoy parts of the campaign and stuff like that really much, and I more enjoy like simple mechanics, not too complex mechanics. I really think what they are doing there has the potential of being absolutely busted with the entire infusion mechanic here. Of course, we don't know how the numbers are going to play out, but just from the footage we are seeing, I feel like these changes to the elemental classes are absolutely out of control, and I'm really looking forward to trying this out on launch. In this video, first I want to talk in general about the changes, what it means and how they can be used or potentially be abused, and then I will have some sections about how does this affect the early campaign for the Stormweaver, and then after that I'm going into some late game speculations. Even though these are purely speculations, we don't know exactly how the numbers are yet, we don't know how the infusions are going to behave, though there's a lot of unknown stuff, so this is clearly speculative, but I just want to talk about a little bit about what builds could emerge from the new infusion mechanic. So what are infusions? Simple. Certain elemental skills generate infusions, which are remnants. You can pick them up, which is, kind of a charge, and then you can use them with another skill to get additional effects. And you can see the infusions in the buff bar on the top left, as you can see in the reveal in the background footage right now. So, ways to generate infusions. First of all, we have the Siphon Element Spirit Gem, which only has a 30 spirit reservation. And it gives us a 5% chance per power on freezing, igniting, or shocking an enemy to get an infusion. And if you don't know how this power thingy works, basically a normal mob has 1 power, a magic mob has 2 power, a rare mob has 5 power, and a boss has 20 power. Then we have the Harmonic Remnant Support Gem. It gives you a chance to spawn an additional one and gives you more pickup radius for those, so this might be nice, but probably not too viable in the endgame, but I might be totally wrong there. Then we have a bunch of skills which generate infusions. My assumption is these are mainly going to be useful in stationary encounters like Simulacrum and boss fights, and obviously during the campaign. I'm going to leave a few out because I think these are not relevant and I want to keep this video relatively short. And I want to start with the Stormweaver here, since this is going to be my starting class. So first of all, the Skewering Winds notable passive skill will be renamed, and it will have a new effect, which means whenever you pick up a remnant, it will appear again after 3 seconds. So basically, whenever you pick up an infusion, after 3 seconds, it's going to appear again. So I really hope it's going to appear on your current position and not on its original position, because that would be pretty stupid, because, you wouldn't really care if the infusions spawn like, 10 meters behind you. But, that's just my assumption that it's going to be like this. So this basically just doubles the amount of infusions you get. The next is going to be the Heart of the Storm, which now basically just gives you a 50% chance to get an extra infusion whenever you collect one, and it's going to be of a random type. So the first thing I want to talk about is Frostbomb here. Frostbomb will now drop a cold infusion, and if you use this in the early campaign or in the little bit later campaign, you can use this with, Spell Cascade, Spell Echo, and probably Second Wind support, and this allows you to generate up to 12 infusions within a very short time. I don't think this is going to be super useful in late game, but in the campaign this is probably really good, since the spark with the cold infusion looks really promising. The next thing is the Orbs and Snap. So Cold Snap is now Snap, and Snap can basically detonate any orb, detonate any mob which is frozen, ignited, or shocked, and it will create a remnant of the corresponding type. So basically you can throw a bunch of orbs, or you can just randomly snap all the enemies and it will generate a bunch of remnants for you. Simple as that. About the orbs have been changed, and some stuff has been moved around. The solar orb is now on the stuff, and the living bomb is now a skill. I don't think it really matters so much. Living bomb will create a remnant as well, but I don't think it's going to be used very much. Orb of Storms, simple said, it's going to explode much faster now and also create a remnant when it dies. So I think orbs are going to be best in stationary fights, but also during the campaign, since you can snap them for a lot of explosion damage, AoE, and extra remnants. And there's also a Ascendancy node for the Stormweaver, which gives you +1 to limit of all elemental skills. So together with Overabundance, this would allow you to get 3 instances of an orb at a single time. You could also use Spell Cascade to create the 3 instances all at once. So this is the main generation mechanics for infusions. Let me know in the comments down below if I forgot about something, but I think I got them all. So next up will be how to use your infusions. So another interesting usage, especially during the campaign, is going to be Frost Bomb to generate cold infusions. Because other like, the orbs cannot really use Spell Cascade, but because they have a limit. But Frostbomb doesn't have a limit, so we can use Spell Cascade, and we can also use Second Wind, for example, depending on, how fast we are going through the campaign. Later, we could also use Spell Echo, but Spell Echo is only is like a tier 2 support, so we couldn't use it in the campaign. But let's just assume we can use Spell Cascade and Second Wind on this, so we can actually generate 6 of these. So depending on how it works, we might get 6 infusions from this, or it's going to be 2. So we have to find out if every instance of the orb created by the, spell cascade is going to give its own infusion. If yes, that's going to be really, really busted during the campaign, because just getting like 6 infusions with just casting these, and these also are going to do exposure, have decent AoE and stuff like that, so they're not completely useless. For example, we could use the Empowered Spark as they showed in the reveal, and it looks really, really cool and powerful. And we can also use the Empowered Frost Nova, even though we don't know how much damage that's gonna do. And we can also use the new Frost Dart ability. We don't know how strong it is, but based on the footage from the reveal you're seeing right now, it's doing decent damage against an Act Boss, so I assume if we have a lot of infusions, this might be a quite decent skill during the campaign. So let's talk about fire infusions early in the campaign. We only have 2 reliable sources, which is the Solar Orb, which you can get from a Pyrophyte staff, but that seems to be level 16 minimum, so this is a little bit later into the campaign. And the second reliable source would be Living Bomb. I've never played Living Bomb, so this might be interesting. It says it detonates if an enemy receives sufficient damage, so if the sufficient damage is not too low, you could just put like Living Bomb 1 or 2 on the mobs and then just fire a fireball and make it explode and collect the infusion. But I think Solar Orb will be a better way to do this. So how do we want to use our fire infusions? Well, mainly the only viable solution here seems to be Fireball, since Fireball damage is significantly increased when you fire infuse it. As you can see, the secondary damage goes up from 218 to 606 on the top end, and also the change is that the secondary projectile can hit the target which has been hit by the first projectile already. So Fireball might be a very, very viable strategy endgame, but also in the campaign if you need the big AoE nukes from the fire-infused Fireball projectiles. I don't really see huge potential for lightning infusions in the early game. The only thing I see is if you have a random lightning infusion, you could drop it on a lightning firewall and then use that with Spark. You could use Arc, but I feel like Arc will not be a great early game skill. Besides that, you would pretty much just have Firestorm with lightning, but I don't think Firestorm is going to be that great in the early game. This is probably more like a late game choice. So one of the most interesting abilities I see for the late game is Firestorm. With the Overabundance gem and the new passive from the Stormweaver, we could get a limit of 3 Firestorms, and who knows what other unique items will be coming up for the next patch, we don't know yet, but we could stack 3 Firestorms. And I think it will not be an issue to get these triple infused at all times. So then, what do we do with Firestorms? Because we can only have 3 active at a time, right? But we could cast way more. As you can see, I have a duration of 8.25 seconds, even though I'm using Overabundance with less skill effect duration. For Sorg, it's pretty easy to pick up skill effect duration from the passive tree, and it's not a huge investment. So we could use this, and then, after we cast 3 Firestorms, we would obviously do something else. We could do like Sparks to use our like cold infusions, or we could do something else like Fireballs, or we could cast the Orbs. Whatever we're gonna do. In a stationary fight, for example, we would just cast Firestorms, everything would die automatically, and we would cast stuff in between, and then after like 8 seconds we would have to recast our Firestorms. So that's actually pretty convenient. And also we can use Mana Tempest, because Mana Tempest with Spark was like, yeah, you would get out of mana pretty much, but I assume Firestorm will stack with the Mana Tempest. So what we can do here is we just go for a Mana Tempest, and then we just throw our Firestorms, and we can just leave the Mana Tempest now if we want, right? We don't have to stay in it. So we can either, like, basically always just do, like, 1 Mana Tempest and 2 Firestorms, and, that's gonna be it. So I think this is gonna be, like, a relatively relaxed playstyle, and if we are, like, stationary in Simulacrum or a boss fight, This seems to me like a pretty easy thing to do, to just stay and, give you a massive damage buff from the Mana Tempest. Again, as I assume that it's snapshots. I don't know if it's snapshots. I would have to test that, obviously. But I think this will be a pretty viable endgame strategy. Another thing which might be great again in late game is Spark, because we have the Cold Infusion, which looked like it's doing more projectiles than the regular Spark, because a big nerf Spark received was the number of projectiles. So if you have like all your Sparks cold infused, you might have no issue anymore with Spark doing so little projectiles. And also we have the new double infused Flame Wall, so we could use a lightning infused Flame Wall, which then gives extra lightning and extra fire damage to our Spark. Then on top of it, we would also have extra cold damage on the Spark. With the new curse, the elemental weakness, we would also have a curse for all of the elements, so we don't have the issue anymore that we have to go for a single element. So this might be a viable late game strategy. It has to be tested though, because we don't know the numbers of the, added damage through the cold and stuff like that. It's all just theory crafting right now, but Spark might be nice again if you infuse it and use firewalls to just, put more damage on the Spark. So Arc now is in projectile spell, so we can use more support gems on it, and it also says it chains more and does more damage when it's lightning infused. We don't know how much, so this might be very good or it might be irrelevant, so we cannot really say so much about Arc other than the little clip we saw. Arc might be a viable endgame strategy, especially also with the new Archon abilities where you can get like a lightning Archon, but we will have to find this out in the late game for ourselves. So obviously we don't know a whole lot about the patch and how the infusions will work. There might be other builds viable like Fireball, or also Eye of Winter might be playable, Ball Lightning might be something playable, or maybe other cold builds. So there's definitely a chance that we will have much more build variety after this. Everything beyond this point will be speculation, and I usually don't like to speculate at all, but we will see this when the patch comes out for ourselves, what will be viable endgame and what not. So last but not least, I want to talk a little bit about the general buffs for the Stormweaver. So first of all, the Elemental Storm has less cooldown now. That's a straight up buff and pretty nice. About the Rain Dancer passive being changed and providing +1 limit to elemental skills, I feel like this is nice if you want to play Firestorm or if you want to play Orbs, but if you want to play a spammable skill like Spark, it's probably not going to do all that much. About the Force of Will, so mana stacking is not really a thing anymore, since Archmage has been significantly nerfed, and also the Stormweaver has been significantly nerfed. Mana stacking is not really a viable strategy. So I like this change. You won't need 5,000 mana, which is a huge investment, to reach like 200% effect of Arcane Surge. Now you can reach 200 effect by just having an empty mana pool. And you can pretty much balance your mana regeneration or use other strategies to pretty much have an empty mana pool all the time to gain the maximum effect of this. Now the last two buffs are pretty much just giving you a shit ton of extra elemental infusions. I'm gonna assume these are gonna play out pretty nicely, but we cannot tell all that much on how good elemental infusions will be. Then we just have a general buff to Archmage. It goes from 3% per 100 maximum mana to 4%, so that's a pretty significant buff. So let's see if Archmage is gonna find some more place with this buff. Another huge buff, for example, to lightning builds is that we can use Frostbomb now to just apply elemental exposure. We can use it with every build. It's super easy to use. It gives a lot of exposure, so this is straight up a buff to all non-cold builds and obviously also to cold builds. Then we have the new Archon notable, so whenever we spend 100% mana, we're gonna transform into an Archon, and I assume this is gonna buff our damage and other stuff with the elemental. We haven't seen anything but the footage of this, so we don't know what exactly it's gonna do. Then we have the Ritual Cadence Keystone. So if you use Elemental Invocation, I think what this does, it will just trigger the spell every 2 seconds. So it's like kind of an auto buff, auto casting ability. You could put a bunch of stuff in there, like your Curse, for example, if you're super lazy. And this seems to be a very, very cool supportive keystone here. This will also synergize nicely with the new Elemental Practitioner node here, which gives you 40% increased critical chance if you triggered a skill recently. And since we will trigger a skill every 2 seconds with this pretty much, we will have this 40% bonus all the time. There you have it. That's my comments on the state of the Sorceress in 0.3. I'm really excited for the league start, and I'm definitely going to start Sorceress with the Stormweaver this league. So let me know in the comments down below if I forgot about something or if you disagree or agree with something. And thank you so much for watching, and I see you guys next time.